Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Monday's homework. We're going to learn some new language. So we're just going to hop right into it. We're going to talk about trigonometric ratios. Ratios is another word for like fractions. And we need to fill in that relationship between the sides and the angles of a right triangle. We only look at a right triangle. So if I look at sine of f in this particular case, so sine, we're just going to need to memorize this. Sine is the opposite side over the hypotenuse side. So opposite over hypotenuse, and that is going to be C over A, because C is opposite of F and A is the hypotenuse. Cosine of F is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent kind of means next to. So the hypotenuse actually doesn't change if we're talking about the same triangles. So the hypotenuse will be A. The adjacent side is going to be B, right here. Tangent. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So when I take the tangent of F, the opposite side is C, the adjacent side is B. So as I go down, now we go sine of L, cosine of L, tangent of L. Sine of L is opposite over hypotenuse. And notice I abbreviated there to just OPP and HYP. That's pretty standard. But if you need to write it out, feel free. It would be opposite over hypotenuse. And L, the hypotenuse, because we are in pretty much the same triangle, the hypotenuse does not change. However, the opposite side does. Here, B is opposite of L. So we're going to get B over A. For cosine of L, we're going to go adjacent over hypotenuse. And remember that, or note that I have just done ADJ for adjacent. And the adjacent is different. Here, the adjacent of L is going to be C. So I'm going to go C over A. And then tangent is opposite over adjacent. Notice how I abbreviated those. And that's going to be opposite is B, adjacent is C. Just like that. It is pretty common to use SOHCAHTOA. I remember learning in my class, you don't need to write this down, but princess SOHCAHTOA. Yeah, anyway, that's how we were supposed to remember it. This never worked for me. I could never remember how to spell. But if we can kind of link up SOH and CAH and TOA, then this can be opposite, and this can be hypotenuse. Sorry to write so small there. And this works for sine. All right, let's see if I can do better here. Here, the C is cosine, the A is adjacent, and the H is hypotenuse. So we could remember that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then here, T is tangent, O is opposite, A is adjacent. If this helps organize it, great. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. You have to remember on your own another way. So now we have some practice. So we look at the sine of E. Alright, now we need the opposite. Now, one way I think about the opposite is once again, if I put my finger here, I'm touching the side of 5 and I'm touching the side of 3, but I'm not touching 4. So 4 is my opposite. And then the hypotenuse is always opposite the 90-degree angle. So once again, if I put my finger there, I'm touching 3 and 4, I'm not touching 5, so it's 4 over 5. It's also, of course, it's the longest side, so that might be a way to do that as well. So cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And so adjacent is the side I am touching, but that's not the hypotenuse. So that would be 3, and the hypotenuse is 5. And then we have the tangent, which is opposite, we've already talked about, is 4, and adjacent is 3. For sine of s, we've just changed where we're going. So if I have s, opposite s is 3, and the hypotenuse is still 5. For cosine of s, the adjacent is 4, and the hypotenuse is 5. And for tangent, the opposite is 3, and the adjacent is 4. So it'll be 3 over 4, just like that. For this last part, we were asked to use segment notation for the side. So sine of y, so this is opposite. What side is opposite of y? It's the JD side. So it's JD. And then what is the hypotenuse? The hypotenuse is dy. And if I take sine of d, that's down here, the opposite becomes jy over dy, because the hypotenuse is still the same. Okay, so for cosine, the hypotenuse is going to be the same, and you need to find the adjacent side on top. Alright, so go ahead and do that. You should have done jy and jd. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. So when I go tangent of y, what's opposite? It's jd. And what's adjacent? Jy. And tangent of d, what is opposite? It's going to be jy. And jd is adjacent. Alright guys, that is your homework for tonight. Good luck, and I'll